Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming along tonight to this webinar about business planning advice for land seekers. My name is Cordelia Hughes, and I'm the Northwest Regional Coordinator for Landmatch England. I'm going to be around throughout the session, and I'm going to be looking at the chat, keeping an eye on the chat, just making sure that any questions that come up, we're going to make sure they're answered at the end. If you have any technical issues, just let me know, and you can ask any questions you have about Landmatch as well, as I work on the program. But tonight we're also going to be joined by Vicky Herbert, who's an agricultural consultant from working for ADAS at the moment. She's going to give us a great overview of the basics for business planning for your land-based business. So thank you so much, Vicky, for attending. We really appreciate your expertise and knowledge, and I'm looking forward to learning some content as well tonight. So looking forward to that. She's going to be taking you through the fundamentals of what a business plan is, how to choose the right agreement and what that means for your business plan, and also the key costs and considerations that you need to think about when you're pulling together a business plan. Many of you will already know this, but business planning is a really vital part of our process here at Landmatch. We are often asked to present business plans to landowners, and it's a really useful key piece of information where you're able to just share what you're doing, share your costs, and present what you're doing to a landowner. And it's really going to help you to get a positive land sharing agreement. So it's a really vital piece of your application and a piece of your land match process. I'm going to just give a little bit of an overview about who Landmatch England is for anyone who is new to the program. I know that some people aren't part of our land matching process at the moment, so I'll just let you know a bit about us. So our mission is all about supporting sustainable land use, increasing access to land for new entrants, and encouraging regenerative and agroecological practices across England. So for many of you, you may or may not know this, but we really have that focus on agroecology. So we're all about producing things in an ecological way, um, aiming towards systems that are circular, aiming towards low inputs, low or no inputs, and just considering nature and everything that we're doing and supporting. So we're really encouraging people to sort of base their land sharing agreements on this, and we're encouraging people who we work with to sort of be thinking about this and be mindful about this as they're moving through their process and thinking about their businesses. So that's something to keep in mind for tonight as well. We offer as a service a range of one-to-one support. So when you sign up to the service, we try to have a one-to-one with you where we try and understand your needs, understand what you're doing, what you're looking for in this case, and really get a feel for your personality as well, because that's quite an important part of the land matching process. We also have an amazing resource library, and if you haven't already, I definitely recommend to go and have a look at it. There's a lot of bespoke pieces that we've put together that are all about land tenure, how to manage a great partnership, how to consider different legal agreements. We've recently had a new resource that you might not have seen if you haven't had a look recently, but it's all about exploring land agreements and working towards a final land agreement. So I'd really recommend to go on our website and have a look at that. We also provide bespoke support for matches. So that's all about doing that personality matching piece and providing some facilitation when you're going through a matching process. So we're basically here if ever you have doubts, worries, if you have questions, if you want to take a step back, if you want to move the pace of your relationship at the moment. So just to remind you that we are here ongoing through the process. And then the last piece is all about just that regional part. So we have coordinators based in the southwest, in the northwest, which is myself, and a coordinator who works across east and southeast of England, our colleague Rachel. So we're all here to sort of do that local networking piece. Just a shout out as well that we're going to be at Groundswell next week, which is in the southeast. So if you're there, come and say hello. We're going to have a stand, and we're also running a session on Wednesday. All the information is on our website, so go and head over there if you're going to be there. Finally, I am going to just leave our website and our email here. It's just hello@landmatchengland.org.uk. And if you have any questions for us after the session, you're very welcome to just email us. And if you have any queries or want to move things along, then you can get in touch with us. And for now, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to introduce Vicky, who is going to be leading this session tonight. Just a reminder that you can put any questions you have in the chat box. I'll be watching them and just make sure that when we come to the Q&A later in the session that they're all going to get answered. So feel free to ask away. And if there feels like a natural break where we'll, do a halfway point, we might do that if things are building up. But we're preempting that we'll just have a Q&A at the end of the session. Okay. So, Vicky, if you're ready
Yeah, thank
and
you.
good to
I'll
take the lead,
just
I'll pass over to you. Thank you so
thank
much.
you. I'll just share my screen and make sure everything's working okay. Can you all see that hopefully? Cordelia, can you see
I
that?
can see it, yes.
Perfect. Okay. And I now can't see the chat, so I think Cordelia is going to keep an eye on that for me. So yeah, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for taking time out of your evening to come tonight. I know there's much better things to be doing on a summer's evening, and yeah, than listening to me go on about business. But I think, like Cordelia said, it's really good to have a nice, reasonably small group. Hopefully, this can be quite interactive. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments, do put them in the chat and we can either kind of stop and ask them then and there, or we can, carry on and have a discussion at the end. But yeah, so I'm Vicky Herbert. I work for a national farm consultancy company called ADAS. And I've been in farm advice for about 5 years. But I've also been kind of on and off farming for about 10 years. So my kind of interest and association with Landmatch is both like professional and personal. So yeah, I'm here tonight in my advisory, wearing my advisory hat. But I'm also registered as a land seeker with Landmatch myself. So my partner and I started our business raising organic pigs about 2.5 years ago now. So we're down in South Devon, and I was a part of the Southwest pilot for Landmatch, which was a year or two ago now. And I just think it's an incredible service. I think it's been a gap in the market for a while. In my advisory role, I meet a lot of farmers who don't have any succession, or their kids and their family don't want to take on their farm, and they're getting older, and they're worried about this business that they've put their life into and generations before them have put their life into, and they want somebody to come in who's passionate and energetic, and help, or take sections of the farm on, or start new enterprises and kind of inject life back into it. So I think, it's, in my opinion, Landmatch is exactly what the industry needs. Both from like a speaking to farmers point of view, and then also as a new entrant farmer myself. I just think it's a really great service, and I'm very happy to be involved and hopefully be helpful. So I'm going to try and speak for about an hour ish, and then allow, I don't know, 20 whatever minutes for questions or just a chat at the end. But yeah, basically the purpose of tonight is I'm going to try and follow on from Richard's webinar, which was end of May. So a month has gone by. Time's gone very quick. But I wasn't able to join that one live, unfortunately, but I caught up, and I was kind of, I'd like to kind of take what he was saying and bring it into the more specifics of how that fits into business planning. So yeah, like I said, just recapping Richard's webinar from last month. So I know that he spoke a little bit about grants and what's available for land-based businesses, but I did just want to reiterate, because these are grants and schemes that I work quite a lot on day to day. So I just thought I'd bring it up again, because I think we've had a bit more news since the end of May to do with dates and eligibility and stuff. So he's mentioned the sustainable farming incentive, so that the 2026 iteration of that is opening next week, end of June, for small businesses, which DEFRA's never done before, never kind of prioritized and targeted small businesses, which I think is great. So that's anybody under 50 hectares, or anybody, if you're bigger than 50 hectares, not already in an environmental scheme. So if you're in that group, or somebody, or a landowner that you work with is in that group, I'd encourage you to kind of look at the options available and see if that might work for you. And then later in the year, in September, it'll open for everybody else. And then Richard also mentioned the capital grants. So I think since then, we've had news that that's coming in July. They've more than doubled the budget, so that's really good news because it didn't last very long last time. But yeah, just to reiterate, that is for capital items, and there's a list on gov.uk, or you can just Google capital grant 2026, it'll come up. Very specific items that they're willing to fund. So the normal ones that I get involved with are fencing, pipework, troughs, concrete roofing, which you need separate approval for. So things like that. It's not, unfortunately, a case of I would like to buy this and DEFRA gives you the money. They're quite prescriptive with what they're willing to fund, and then they also give you what the grant rate that they're willing to pay per item. So again, that's all on the gov.uk website. And then I also wanted to mention, which I don't think that he brought up, there's a charity called the Addington Fund, and they do all kinds of like farmer and rural community support, but they also have got a new entrant scheme. And I just wanted to flag this because I think it might be really useful for people that are involved or are looking at being a land seeker with Landmatch. I've actually gotten this fund myself for my own small business. So it's basically a grant of up to £3,000 for new entrant farmers. And I think, well, don't quote me, but it's somewhere between, you've got to have been in business for less than 3 years, I think. Again, you can just Google it, or go on their website, and they'll have all the details there. It does list quite specific things that they're willing to fund. They talk about soil testing, fencing infrastructure, which has got what I got for my pigs. But don't be put off by that list. I would definitely encourage you, if you're thinking about buying any infrastructure or equipment for your business, I would definitely get in touch with them anyway, because I know I'm always recommending this to people because I got it, and I think they're great, and they really know their stuff, and they were really engaging with me through the process. I recommended it to a friend of mine, and he was able to get a BCS, a compact tractor, which isn't listed on their website. I think he just did a really good job at justifying why it would be good for his business. And yeah, he got the funding for it. So yeah, don't be put off by the restrictive list on their website. Just get in touch, say who you are, what you're trying to do, share them with a business plan, which we're going to run through tonight. And yeah, I would definitely encourage you to look into that. So that's all the grants, just to kind of make you aware. And then, yeah, just to move on to touch on some of the stuff that I think Richard kind of ended on for me to kind of pick up, which hopefully will work quite well. So he was talking about quite a lot about loans, highlighting always considering a payback period. So this is the period of time that you're expecting it to take to pay back your loan, and you can kind of fit that into your business plan and your costings, which we'll go through later on. Always looking for the most competitive interest rate. So depending on the type of loan you're looking for, and what kind of risk you are considered to be, and your business is considered to be, the lender will give you varying interest rates. So it's always a case of shopping around, and yeah, looking for the most competitive rate, really. And then he also touched on secured and unsecured loans, which I think is a good thing to highlight again. So secured loans are a money lending against an asset of your business. So maybe it's land or a tractor or infrastructure, or something that has value that your business owns. You can then lend money against that, on the premise that if you are unable to make your payments or you have to default on your loan, the lender can then repossess that. And that's quite often considered a lower risk than an unsecured loan. So an unsecured loan is probably people like ourselves. So we're new entrant farmers. We haven't got much, capital or infrastructure behind us. And the loan is considered quite high risk, because if I default on my payments, the bank's not got nothing to take from me. They're just out a couple of grand or whatever it is. So an unsecured loan is really where a business plan comes into play, and you are demonstrating to the lender why you will be able to pay back that loan and how you're going to do it. Richard also talked about balance sheets, which is something I'm going to talk about quite a lot tonight. But yeah, just to reiterate, so a balance sheet is something that basically lays out your assets. So that's things like things that have value, like equipment, infrastructure, land, whatever it might be, versus your liabilities, and it kind of balances those out. And hopefully, the hope is that you'll eventually be in the positive. But we'll go into a bit more detail about that later. He also talked about and just touched on profit and loss statements, which I'm going to go through tonight. But that's kind of laying out your revenue versus your expenses, and then looking at net or gross profit. And then cash flow, I think he mentioned, but we're going to talk a bit more in detail about that tonight. This is kind of showing how money is moving in and out of your business, and the kind of incomings and outgoings, how that affects your kind of cash in hand balance. So yeah, those are kind of what I took as key takeaways from his webinar that I'd like to kind of talk about in more detail tonight. So first of all, I wanted to start by just running through some like key financial terms that I think people who talk about this, you know, it's there all day, every day. They use terms quite flippantly. And then some people are just like, I've got no idea what you're talking about. And there's no substance behind what they're saying, because you're just, yeah. So I wanted to run through some. If you've come across any that you're not sure of, maybe you could put them in the chat. And we can discuss them, or I'll try and define them, or if I can't, I'll go away and find somebody that can. But just to run through, so like I've said, an asset, so that's something that's owned by your business, and that might be land or machinery or equipment, but it's something that has a definable value. The opposite of that, which is a liability, that's an obligation of your business. So the most common one of that is a loan. It's something that you owe. I always think as asset is own and liability is owe. That's kind of my way of thinking about it. Revenue, people use this quite interchangeably, but revenue is it's all of the income coming in. So it's not talking about any costs. It's just talking about all of your income from sales. And sometimes farmers say to me, oh yeah, well, you know what, my total revenue for this year was this, or my gross was this. And I'm like, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in your net profit. So that's the money that you're walking away from. So yeah, your gross profit is your revenue, so your income coming in, minus your indirect costs, or sometimes that's called cost of goods sold. So that's any costs that are directly related to producing your products. So you've got money from your products coming in, and then all of the money that's associated directly with producing those products. That's your gross profit. And then your net profit is that plus every other cost that your business has. So overheads, we're going to talk about that, but it's your revenue minus all of your costs. So your net profit is really the most important thing as far as I'm concerned. That's how much money you're taking home at the end of the day. So your overheads, these are sometimes called fixed costs. These are your indirect costs. So I think of them as like an umbrella that sits above everything else. So it's not directly related to an individual product. It's things like rent on the land, utilities, maybe like a vehicle loan, things that aren't related to any products that you produce, but they're a business cost. And then a variable cost is something that changes in line with your cost of production. So these are things like feed, packaging, seeds, things like that. So these are kind of the terms that I come across most often. But yeah, like I said, if anybody's got anything else that they've come across that they'd like to talk about and see where it fits in, just pop it in the chat. So I wanted to start really with thinking about the start of the business plan, in my opinion, is figuring out what you want to do. So you can't start thinking about your expenses, your costings, your income, any of that until you've decided what you're trying to achieve in the next however long. So these are things that are very, very specific to you. I can't make the decisions for you, unfortunately. It's a real case by case basis. But I've listed just a couple on the right there that I think are some of the questions that you should be asking yourself before you even put pen to paper and you're starting on your spreadsheets and your investments and all that kind of stuff. It's really taking it back to the bare bones of what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, the first one is which enterprise are you going to focus on? Quite often I meet people who are looking at diversifying or buying land or something, and they say, we're going to have a market garden and we're going to have pigs and we're going to have laying chickens and we're going to have cut flowers and we're going to have an educational. And it's just, they haven't really drummed down into what they're trying to do. They just want it all. And that's great. But I think to write a business plan, you have to be quite specific. Otherwise, it's just throw a load of money at it and see what comes back, which isn't, unfortunately, it's a luxury doing that kind of thing. And I think if you're a new entrant, you really have to properly think it through. So yeah, you need to decide which enterprise you're going to focus on. And then from there, you can answer other questions. So, okay, I want to focus on building a flock of sheep. And at the end of if I pick 3 years that I'm going to business plan for, try and be quite long term. I want to have 100 sheep by the end of 3 years. Okay, well, to get there, how much land do I need? And then that will give you how much rent you're willing to pay. And it all kind of, it stimulates different questions. Also something to consider is business structure. So this is something, I'm not an expert. I'm not a qualified an accountant or solicitor or anything, but it's definitely something you should be considering when you're thinking about setting up a business. So there's all kinds of options. You've got sole trader, so self-employed, partnership, which is quite common for farming businesses, limited company, so that's where your company is completely disconnected from you and your personal finances. And then you've got kind of not-for-profits like CICs, which are becoming more common. And again, I would seek professional advice from somebody who knows more about it than I do. It's a very case-by-case basis. Basically depending on you, your finances, and what kind of profit you're trying to turn, if you are trying to turn a profit. And also your business structure will affect what kind of funding you can look for. So quite a lot of particularly social enterprise funding, they only want to fund not-for-profits or charities or CICs. So it's just thinking about, okay, what do I want to do? Where am I going to get the money? And that will hopefully kind of inform your business structure decision. Type of tenancy agreement. So this is, again, something that when you're thinking about your long-term plan, do you want that security? How long-term are you envisioning? Do you want a formal farm business tenancy? So this is normally where you pay per acre or per hectare or whatever that might look like. And it's, 5, 10, 20 years. Do you want to go into a profit share? So are you looking for a landowner or an investor who you're going to eventually split profits with, 70-30 or 50-50 or whatever that might look like. And then, I feel like in the farming industry, quite often I come across work exchange kind of agreements. And this is where you might not be due any rent, but you will be expected to work, I don't know, a day with the landowner on their business, helping out. So that's a different option as well. And again, these all depend on your circumstances and what's going to work best for you. How much time do you realistically have to put towards the business? It's a word I'm going to use a lot tonight, but I always say be realistic. Be ambitious, but also be realistic. So you can't say, I work full time and I have 3 young kids and parents to take care of, but I'm going to put 40 hours a week to my business. Like, I just think you've got to, you're kind of setting yourself up to fail there and be really exhausted. So I think, yeah, especially when you're looking at starting out fresh and you're looking at your year 1 finances, you've got to be realistic about how much time, on a farm, there's always stuff to do. So I think if you lowball on the time, there'll always be more, but at least you're going into it knowing what you're committing to. Another thing to consider is whether or not there's any kind of additionals involved in your land agreement. So will there be accommodation? Are you going to live on the land? Is there any equipment that you're going to request use of? Has your landowner got a tractor or a mill or handling equipment or something that you're going to want to use? Or any infrastructure. So do you want sheds or a packing space or a commercial kitchen, or whatever they're offering? That'll all play into basically how much rent you're willing to tender, and therefore, yeah, that cost to your business. That'll tell you that. Do you want to take any salary or any personal drawings from the business? I would say, again, being realistic / pessimistic, I think Richard mentioned in his webinar that if you're turning a profit and taking a salary from your business by year 2, you're doing really well. So that's don't be put off if you're unfortunately not able to take a salary from your business for the first year or 2. That's completely normal, especially for new entrants in farming. And I think you need to be prepared for that. So kind of prepare your business finances for that, but also prepare your personal finances, and think about what costs are going to be associated, whether it's rent, and how that's going to affect whether or not you're going to be able to take a salary. So we're getting into slowly getting into the numbers side of it. But I wanted to bring up the importance of trying to forecast your income as accurately as possible. So I think it's really, really easy to spend money. Like you can say, I'm going to start a farm and I need to rent this much land or buy this much land. I need a tractor that's going to be 12 grand, a polytunnel, 5 grand. Livestock I've got to start off with, sheds, equipment, whatever that is. It's really easy to have your shopping list. But what's not so easy is to accurately say what you're selling and when. And I think this is one of the most important things, and quite often things that I'm sure other businesses as well, but definitely in farming, we get wrong, and then our finances aren't as good as we think they're going to be. So if you can start off in your business plan by being as accurate as possible with the money, with the revenue that's coming in, there's going to be no nasty surprises down the road. Like I said, I'm going to bang on about being realistic. So again, what time have you got to put towards the business, and what area of land are you prepared to pay rent on? So this will all dictate how much of a product you're able to produce. So you're not going to be producing 30,000 litres of milk on a 10-acre farm and putting 5 hours a week to it. You're just not. So that is really the first consideration of a business plan, as far as I'm concerned, is the amount of time you've got to put to it and the area of land that you're looking at. I would also definitely speak to potential customers and any possible outlets ideally before you're starting your business plan. Having those conversations is always useful, because in the future you never know what's going to come from it. But also when you're business planning, it's really, really important to know that whatever you grow and produce, you have a market for, because there's no good forecasting for 10 kilos of salad production and then only having a market for 5, because your business plan isn't based off of what you produced. Your business plan is based off of what you sell. So that 5 kilos of salad sitting there going to waste is a loss for your business. So you've got to have your market ready and make sure that you're minimizing waste. I would definitely be seeking out any comparisons that are similar businesses of what you're trying to develop, and looking at baselines or industry averages. So that maybe some people are doing market garden courses or beekeeping courses or whatever that might look like, and looking at other people in the industry with a similar size business. What are they producing? And talking to other local farms that are very similar to the project you're trying to develop. Maybe you've got previous employers and you've got experience with them, and now you're ready to go out on your own. Most people I speak to, they're more than happy to help out and say, oh yeah, from that 50-foot row we get this many kilos of carrots, or whatever that might look like. It's all information that's going to make your forecasting of income more accurate. Digitalizing things. This is a really hard one for farmers, but I am a real advocate for it. I think having things online, having things on a laptop or a tablet or whatever you want to do is so important, but especially for business planning, because it means that you can edit and chop and change and model. And I'm going to come on to that a little bit later, but a business plan can be used to simulate different situations and help you make business decisions for the future. And if you've spent, every night in 1 week drawing up a beautifully color coded, with your fancy pens and a really beautiful pad of paper, and it's all looking really, really good. And then I come along and say, oh, you haven't accounted for your overheads, or you haven't accounted for waste, or what about that forecast and everything like that. You're going to be banging your head against a wall and you won't want to change it. So if it's on a pad of paper, you're less likely to use a business plan for what I believe it should be used for, which is constantly changing, reviewing, editing. So yeah, I feel like a lot of people on this call will already be in the digital world, maybe not, but definitely more than probably the farmers that I speak to day to day. But yeah, I can't advocate for it enough. Just have it online. You can make copies of it, edit the copies, delete them, press undo if you don't want. It's really, really valuable not having, and also you won't lose it. I'm terrible. I should take my own advice for writing things down and then losing the pad of paper. If you just have it digitally, it's there, and yeah, you can play around with it. It's really, really important to account for potential losses. Obviously, none of us want losses. We all want our businesses to work perfectly. But accounting for a loss can be the difference between turning a profit and not. So if you are creating a business plan that's, blue skies thinking, all my seeds are going to take, all my chicks are going to survive, all my cows are going to produce 20 litres a day, whatever it might look like, you're then and your blue skies thinking and you're only just turning a profit, that disease or drought or whatever it might look like is going to come in and potentially take 10%, 15%, or maybe even more if you're really unlucky, and that's your profit gone. So if you can forecast your income allowing for about 10 to 15% of loss in your first 2-3 years, hopefully you can become more efficient and figure out what's going wrong and drill that down. And if you don't have any losses, that's great, and you've made more money than you thought. But I would just account for losses where you can. And also think about when the revenue is coming in. So in farming particularly, as we all know, it's really seasonal. So there can be periods, and we'll look at that in the cash flow later, there could be periods of time when you've got loads of expenses and hardly anything coming in, the hungry gap, or your cows might be dry, or whatever that looks like. It's really important, and we'll talk about that in a minute in cash flow, to break it down. I do it month by month, so that you can kind of schedule when that income's coming in. Because it's no good saying, oh, I'm going to make 10 grand a year, but if that 10 grand is all in August, you're in trouble for the rest of the year. You've got money going out and no money coming in. So it's really important to think about the timeliness of when your money's coming in.
We've just got a quick question from Angus, which is relevant here. He just asks if the 10 to 15% of the estimated loss is of the profit or of
No, so it's of
revenue.
I would do it of revenue. Yeah, because it's not you're not having losses of costs, you're only having losses of revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Hope that helps. Thanks.
So I was gonna carry on. Got 2 more slides, and then we're gonna go into the numbers. So I was gonna have a break because I'm really hot, and I'm sure everybody else is. But yeah, just to talk a little bit about, if I haven't already put you off, why I think you should write a business plan. So as far as I'm considered, first and foremost, it's for you. So like we've said, it's going to stimulate all kinds of questions, conversations, and targets that you're trying to reach over whatever period of time you want to plan for. Like I said before, it's going to inform things like the area of land that you're looking for, upfront investment. So that's really important when you're looking at doing your costings and your cash flow, and you're thinking, oh God, I'm going to be, in my first year by summer, I'm down 4 grand. You're going to need more money to start that business. So it's saying, well, first of all, how much money have you got? Can you kind of simulate your business plan to fit that? And if not, you're going to need to find the money from elsewhere and look at loans or partnerships or whatever that might look like. Again, it's going to ask the question of the time allocated. So what's realistic for you? Whether or not you want to take any money from the business or whether you can. This is really, really important because yeah, on your darkest day when you're covered in mud in December in your first year and you're not making any money and you're wondering, why the hell have I done this? If you've done a really good job and a really accurate job at your business plan, you've got year 2 or maybe year 3 to look forward to when you're turning a profit and things are great and you're paying you're paying yourself, or you've got 1 day a week of help, paid help. It's kind of like, for me and personally, and a lot of the farmers that I work with, it's that light at the end of the tunnel thing of like, okay, I'm doing this now because it's part of a bigger vision. And yeah, hopefully it'll spell out for you how long it's going to be for you to break even or potentially turn a profit. And like I said, it's going to set out targets. So really, it's kind of drawing up a dream or your vision, and then zooming into the minutia of the financials and how exactly you're going to get there. And also, it's really important for reviewing. So like I said, digitalize it, and then you can always come back to it and you can always change it. So year on year, I'll talk a little bit about that at the end, but I encourage people, every quarter or at least every year, to go back and look at what you were planning for, or what you were hoping for in the year, whether or not you achieved that. If you didn't, why? And make those changes for the year coming ahead. And if you exceeded that, amazing. How can you carry on that upwards trajectory? A business plan is also for a potential landlord, obviously. We're looking at land offers through Landmatch, or a potential investor. So really, it's your way. Like Cordelia said, it's a really important part of the land matching process, because you are demonstrating to that landowner, one, that you've thought it through and you've put in the effort. So you're committed to this, but also that you are capable and financially viable to make this business work. So you've properly thought it through. You've got your kind of incoming investment or capital required. And you can say, by year 3, I know that I can pay this much rent. Or maybe you're on a staggered thing and you say, first year I can't do any rent, but year 3 I can pay it all back because I know I'm going to be turning a profit, and I'm demonstrating that to you. And that's a similar thing for an investor. So especially, like I said, if you're looking at unsecured loans, you've got nothing behind you, nothing for the bank to take if you default on your loans. You've got a really concrete business plan, which shows that you've thought everything through. You've considered, wastage and losses, and you've got your potential market, and you've forecasted how much of a product you're going to be able to produce, and you know that money's coming in, and you know that you're generating a profit. That's a great way to demonstrate to an investor. Maybe they're asking for a profit share or a share of equity or whatever it might be in your business. You're able to demonstrate to them that you're a good investment at the end of the day, that you're a good bet. And it's also for a grant application. So I don't know if anybody on this call has panic written quite a bad business plan for a grant deadline, because I have. And I know a lot of people who have. But yeah, that's really, really important for to show that you align with the funder. So maybe it's kind of social or environmental shared aims, and you're saying, this is what I'm trying to do, and this is why I think why the grant would be, well spent on me and my business, and this is what it's going to achieve. And yeah, it also demonstrates, as I said, to a lender that you are able to pay back that loan. So you've got your cash flow, and you're saying, I need a payback break for the first year because I'm not going to make any money. But by year 3, I can pay back £500 a month with interest, or whatever that might look like. Again, it's demonstrating to a landowner, to an investor, to a potential partner, or to a grant funder that you've thought it all through and you've mapped it all out, basically. Yeah. So yeah, coming on to what I think makes a good business plan. The first kind of the start of a business plan, to me it should kind of read like a book. So you're starting it off by saying what you're going to do, basically, what your business is and what you're trying to achieve and what you're going to produce. And these are often called executive summaries or maybe a business description. And these can vary in professionalism or personability depending on who you're pitching to. So I would imagine with the land matching process, everything's reasonably friendly and personable. Like the landowner wants to get to know you personally, wants to have you on their land, and wants to be involved in your business. Whereas if you're going to a high street bank for a loan, they don't care what your favorite color is. Like, they just want to know, here's my business plan and here's my numbers and I'm a really good investment. So you've got to kind of vary with who your audience is. Excuse me. But basically the purpose of this, and you can be as detailed as you want, it's who you are, what you're going to do, where you want to do it, when you're going to do it, and how you're going to do it. And those are all questions that I would ask myself, and the next slide is going to go into that a bit more. And yeah, like I said, for Landmatch, I think maybe Cordelia can weigh in on this a little bit more when you have your kind of one-to-one time. Yeah, I think you can be really personable, maybe put a photo in, talk about your, how you got here and what you're trying to do and why. Current financials is a really good thing to put in your business plan if you've got them. So if you're already an existing trading business and you're looking to expand, or you're looking for investment, or a landowner to build your business, you can show them a record of your accounts. So that's if you've been going like 10 years, I wouldn't show them everything. I'd do the last 3 years or whatever. But that's demonstrating to them, hopefully, that year on year your business is looking better. It's turning more of a profit. The equity is higher. And you would do that through a profit and loss statement and also a balance sheet. And we're going to talk a bit about that and what that means in a minute. Whether you've got a record of accounts to date or not, maybe you're a brand new business, I would imagine a lot of us are. You want to include your projected financials. So this is 2, 3, possibly longer. In farming, you want to really stretch that timeline, because as we're going to come on to, it takes a long time to turn a profit. So the further ahead you plan for, the better you're going to look by the end of it. But that, would again look like a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet, and then also your cash flow. So how money is moving around in the business. And I always say I plan for 3 years. That's kind of my sweet spot, I think, especially for a new business. By year 3, hopefully you'll be demonstrating that you're earning some money. But yeah, 2 years is good. 5 years is great. It's whatever works for you, whatever you've got time to do. But just making a start and planning for a year or 2 is a really good place to start. So just to talk a bit more about this business description or executive summary, if you're being a bit more professional about it. These are kind of the 5 things that I would focus on. So again, saying who you are, you want to introduce yourself, maybe put in a nice photo of you working on the land or doing what you're suggesting that you're going to do on this piece of land. Talk about your previous experience, talk about why you're qualified to do this, and why you think you would run a great business. I think it's good, especially if it's a really personable one, to talk about, why you're passionate about this. And your why, so your purpose, why are you doing this? Maybe you really believe in education and bringing people onto the land, or you really believe in local food, or whatever that might look like really let them get to know you. And also talk about, is there going to be anybody else involved in the business? So maybe you've thought about your business structure and you're going to be in a farming partnership with a spouse or a family member or a friend, or maybe even an investor. Are there going to be other people involved in this business? Are they going to be on the land? Are you going to have volunteers coming once a week? Just trying to keep them in the loop about who's going to be involved. So that's again just drilling down into what enterprises you're planning to do. So maybe in your first 2 years you're going to do cut flowers, and then in your third year you're going to bring in laying hens, or whatever that might look for you. And when you've got these products, where are you going to sell them? So you've thought about this, you've got your target audience, or you've got people and customers lined up. And again, demonstrating that could tie in with your passions and your why. So tying it all together. Where you're going to do it. So again, reiterating, I've done my business plan, I've asked myself all these specific questions, and I think I need this much land, or maybe it's going to go up year on year. So just being specific with that. And do you need any other specifics of the land that you're looking for? So do you need to be in a certain location? Maybe you've got a home base or somewhere that you've lived for a while, and all your customers are around you, or your kids go to school, and you need to be there. You need to be within half an hour driving distance of where you are now. That's something that I would definitely be talking about, is that I'm here and I'm settled, and this is where I want to be. And then other things that you might consider really, really crucial to being able to produce what you're trying to produce. So like a soil type, do you need a certain soil type for your crops to be successful? Topography, so do you really, you're not looking at steep land at all, you need it flat, or whatever. And do you want access to buildings? So talk about if you've got livestock, when they would be coming in, what you need it for, a pack shed or whatever that might be. It's really, I think it's important, particularly in something like Landmatch, which is quite personable. Just let them get to know you and be an open book. I think people are so much more likely to, they at the end of the day, the landowner probably, they love and they care for their land and they want you there. They want to be involved too, and they want to get to know you and your business. When are you going to do it? So what's your time scale? When are you hoping to start? When are you hoping to break ground or build that polytunnel or buy those sheep or whatever that might look like? And then, if you're planning for 3 or 5 years, when are you going to expand, and how are you going to measure that? So your KPIs, your key performance indicators, are you going to say, by year 2, I want to have 30 milking cows, or whatever that might look like? Again, just let them in on your thinking about things. And how long of a tenancy agreement? Be really upfront about that when you're describing what you're trying to do. Are you looking for that long-term security, or are you just looking to get off the ground and possibly move somewhere else? Just be upfront and honest, I think, definitely in a Landmatch situation. And then finally, how? So how are you going to start it? Your startup capital and your initial investments. Have you got that money, or where and how are you going to get it? The time that you've got to put in. So I think particularly for farming, where people live on their farms, and you might be asking for accommodation in your land agreement, it's really important to let people into your thinking about when you're going to be around. So if you need to go and water the propagation tunnel or open the chickens at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and you've got to drive past the landowner's house to get there, I think it's quite nice to tell them that up front. Things. Are you going to want to camp in the summer because you've got to water your tomatoes, or whatever that might look like? I would just be as personable as possible, and really let them into what you're planning. And then also, do you want to put up any infrastructure or buy any machinery? If you start off in loose conversations with somebody, and then you get the land agreement, and then you casually mention to them that in year 2 in your business plan you were planning on putting up a polytunnel, and then they're like, what the hell, that's out the blue, I don't want a polytunnel. These are all conversations that I think you should be really upfront with to begin with. And then it's really, for me, this is so you're both on the same page. You both know who you are, what you're trying to do, when you're going to do it. and then it opens the communication for a better long-term relationship, I think, if everybody's upfront. And now I'm moving on to the numbers, which might be quite heavy considering it's 7:30 and it's boiling. So I was just going to have a little break. I don't know if there's anything in the chat, Cordelia. I wasn't going to say have a strict 10 minutes. I was just going to have a drink and see if anybody had
Yeah.
anything to say.
I think you have a little drink. I was going to share a few reflections, I guess. Just the fact that so many of the things that you're saying come up in my conversations, that one-to-one that I have with land seekers. And then when you say the word business plan, everyone goes, "Oh my gosh, business plan,
Yeah,
my
everybody
business
thinks a
plan."
business plan is just numbers, and that's just
Exactly.
the end bit, really. Like that's the bit you can kind of, push into the grass. It's really deciding what you want to do first.
Yeah, it definitely strikes me just how much someone can actually get done just from our first meeting, really, and how
Mm-hmm.
much can already go down on paper,
Yeah. And
which is
also,
really
I
cool.
think, sorry to interrupt, but just on that point, like things can change. You can have a conversation with Cordelia about land that you want, and you're, looking at setting up pigs, and then you go and see the land, and you think, actually, oh, this is so flat, and it's great for a market garden. Maybe I'll start that first. Like just because you're saying it out loud and writing it down, because you've digitalized it, you can change it. Like it can ebb and flow with you. Like it's not set in stone.
Yeah, wonderful tips. I'm also just going to say that Vicky has kindly offered to share her slides afterwards. So all of this we're going to share. And I'm also going to send this document that we have in the Landmatch resource library, which is a brief business planning guide that also has some of the titles of things you need to include. So obviously, all the same stuff that Vicky's mentioning. So I'm going to send it over just to have something on paper that you can immediately look at after this, but it's going to complement the slides really well. And just to say that we have that resource library there that has useful bits and pieces for everyone.
Great.
Lots of useful tips so far.
I'm just going to fill up my water. And then I think, did we say 8 o'clock, Cordelia? Sorry.
Yes, hopefully we can finish at 8. Um, we can see how things go, and if there's something really vital, I'm sure that people who can stay on will stay on. But
That's fine. And then, yeah, if anybody has, I've put my email on the last slide. And obviously you can contact me through Cordelia. So if anybody has any burning questions that we can't get to, because I've been rabbiting on for an hour, I'm more than happy to answer them after this. It's not an issue.
okay,
Um, yeah. Is there anything else in the chat, or shall I dive in to the numbers?
I will come back to the question that's just been asked at the end. I think if we have
Perfect.
time for the Q&A. Thanks, Chrissy.
Good. So hopefully everybody's still with me. I'm going to try and get through this in like 20 minutes-ish, and then we've got time to chat and for questions at the end. But yeah, so just getting into the slightly heavier bit of the evening is just talking about numbers. If you're not a numbers or spreadsheet person like me, it can seem really, really daunting, but I'm hoping if I can break it down for you, it doesn't have to be. So it's really quite simple, she says, of thinking you're forecasting your income, you're using all those tips that I suggested, and you're trying to be as accurate as possible. So how much money is coming in when, and then you've got your shopping list of what you'll need to do that business. And that's really all it is, but it's just laying it out and using all these accountancy terms, and making sure that everything lines up, which a spreadsheet is great for because it will flag if something's wrong. So yeah, just to start a little bit, I know that this might not be as applicable to Landmatch Landseekers, but maybe it will be, and hopefully useful for somebody on the call. So if you are a trading business and you do have some like record of accounts from previous years in your business plan, like I said, you can include those to hopefully show that your business is successful financially and profitable. And hopefully that kind of demonstrates to a landowner, lender, business partner, whatever it might be, that you're a good investment, that things are going well. So your current financials, I would be including a profit and loss statement. So that's on the left of the screen. And I think Richard touched a little bit on this last time. So I've just drawn these up This was for, I was imagining, I did a market garden because if we're looking at year on year, as far as I'm concerned, crops are the easiest one to do because typically you seed them and do all of that investment, and then you harvest and sell them in the same year. So it's kind of easy to see. Whereas if you're starting a suckler herd, you might put all your money in and then not see anything for 2 or 3 years. So I think this is the easiest way to demonstrate it, but yours might not look like this. So I was thinking, yeah, 3 or 4 years in of a market garden. This on the left would be our profit and loss statement. So I've ended it with the calendar year. So the end of last year, I was imagining. Everything's going pretty well. So I'm selling just over 30 grand of that. That's my revenue coming in through all of my sales. And then I've got my costs of goods sold, or also known as direct cost. So those are things that are directly related to you producing that revenue. So that's things like the seeds that you, or the seedlings that you bought, any compost, soil amendments, crop protection, irrigation, things like that. So my gross profit, my revenue minus my costs of goods sold, is 26,400. So that's great. That's my gross. So that's how normally people would lay it out. Again, I don't look at gross because I want to know net, but it's good to include. And then you've got your operating expenses, also known as overheads, fixed costs. It's all interchangeable. That's things like your rent. That's 4 grand. That's quite a lot for a market garden, but whatever. Things like labor. So maybe you've finally hired some help year 5 and you've got some extra hands. Fuel, vehicles, insurance, marketing, things like that. Things that aren't directly related to that tomato that you're selling. They're the umbrella costs that sit above. And then I'm demonstrating that incorporating all of those costs and weighing them against my revenue, all of my income from my sales, I am net profiting £7,700. And that's great. So that's really just me demonstrating that last year I made £7,700. So you should give me that loan of 10 grand because I've proved that I'm making a profit and I can pay it back. On the right is a balance sheet. So this is a bit different, and you don't typically do it on a year-by-year basis, even though I have in this example. This is more of a snapshot on any given day. So normally you would do it at the end of a calendar year or the end of a financial year in April, but it can be done at any time. Maybe you're applying for a grant that closes in October and you do your balance sheet for September. It really doesn't matter. But it's just a snapshot of the business's assets versus the business's liabilities. And if everything's going well, and hopefully it is by year 4 or 5 or whatever my example is, you should have positive equity in your business. So you would normally lay it out. Again, people do things differently, and that's okay. But you would normally kind of separate your assets. So you've got current assets. So that's things basically cold hard cash. So cash in the bank, cash in your hand, any accounts receivable. So that is maybe you've sent a load of produce to the suppliers last week and you've invoiced them and they haven't paid you yet. That's kind of, figuratively money in your hand, money owed to you. So that's accounts receivable. And you can also include inventory. So maybe you've got a stash of seeds that's going to keep for next year and they've got, a demonstrable value or packaging or whatever that might be. So those are your current assets. And then your fixed assets is bigger kind of tangible infrastructure stuff. So I've got a polytunnel on there, my irrigation system, tools, and I've also got a vehicle. So that my total assets are 22 grand. That's the value. If you sold everything in my business, that's what you would get. And then I'm weighing those against my liabilities. So like I said, most commonly an example would be a loan. But also maybe you owe people money. So sometimes you owe HMRC, the government, money. You might have bought a load of kale seedlings because your seeds didn't take, and the nursery company has invoiced you and you haven't paid it. That's a liability. And then, any loans. So maybe you've taken finance for a vehicle or a loan for the polytunnel, like I have in this example. But things are looking good because my total liabilities are adding up to 10 grand and my assets are 22. So my equity, so basically if you sold everything in the business and you settled all of my debts and all of my obligations, the business would be worth 12 grand. That's basically what equity means. If you sold everything and settled everything, that's what you'd be coming away with. And ideally, and I'll show this in a minute, you want to be building equity in that business and demonstrating to a potential investor or partner that you're a good investment, because equity is building year on year. So that's an example of your current financials or your records to date. That's what you might show to say, oh yeah, I've been trading for 3 years and things are looking pretty good. So going back to the start, again, I'm focusing on market gardens, but if you've got livestock or tree propagation or anything longer term, it might look a bit different. But yeah, this was tried to be the easiest one. So yeah, you can do a forecasted profit and loss statement. So again, this is looking at income, revenue, all of your income from sales, any costs associated with those sales, and any overheads or operating expenses. And the idea is that year one, things look pretty bleak. Like I said, we're net profiting minus £300. Year two and year three, we're building on that. So yeah, like I said, be realistic with your forecasts. Maybe you started in May and things got ahead of you and you didn't have everything set up and you're only making 4.5 grand of sales in your first year. That's fine. Your cost of goods sold might be a bit higher too, because you haven't got any inventory to carry over, and you're having to buy all new packaging or seed. You haven't quite got your seed order right, so you're paying a lot for seeds. And then your operating expenses, so you're having to buy new equipment or new tools, you're setting up bank accounts, you're doing your first rent payment. So things look, yeah, not great in year one, which is why we want to do 3, 4, 5 year forecasts so that we're showing that we're building on it. In year two, again, I'm forecasting my veg sales. I've got the full year. I'm able to use my polytunnel and I can start my seeds early and things looking good. So £11,000 worth of revenue, of income coming into the business. Because I'm producing more, I'm having to buy more seeds and more plants and more potting soil. And I also feel like I need to spend a bit on crop protection and irrigation. So my gross profit, so my revenue minus my cost of goods sold, is 3,300. So in the positive, which is good. But then to get my net profit, I've got to include all of my umbrella operating costs. So again, I've got to pay my rent. My utilities has gone up a little bit. And yeah, all repair of any tools that I bought. So I'm net profit £1,200, which doesn't sound like a lot when you've given your life to a business for 2 years, but it's better than the year before and you're on that upwards trajectory. Year three, things are looking great. So our income, 22.5 grand, more than doubled from year two. Because of that, my direct growing costs, so any costs associated with producing that, have also gone up because I'm producing more. But overall, my gross profit, because I'm producing so much, is 12,700. So that's great. And then my operating expenses or my overheads have gone up a lot, but not crazy. As you can see, I've put in labor there. So by year three, I'm able to, and this will take a bit, you won't get to this point straight off the bat. This is the part of forecasting and then figuring out, oh, actually by year three, I'm turning a profit and I want some help. So I'm going to allow nearly 4 grand for labor. But it's all about showing that growth to you and, demonstrating that to you that you're trying to achieve where you want to be, but also to your landowner or investor or whoever it might be. You'll also want to include a balance sheet in your projected finances. So again, if you're picking 3 years, just take it and run with it, and do 3 years for everything. So this, again, your balance sheet is your assets versus your liabilities. So like I said, year one looks a bit bleak. We haven't got that much cash in the bank or in our hands, but we did buy a polytunnel. So we bought the kit, we paid the labor, ground clearance, everything. We put it up, 6 grand that polytunnel's worth. That's great. That's an asset that our business now owns. However, we also took a loan to put that polytunnel up to the value of £6,000. So they kind of, balance each other out. But I did buy some tools. So that's, £700. And I had to take a credit card, unfortunately. So that goes on my liability list, is my credit card's £700. So we're coming out, like I said, equity, if we sold everything and settled all of our debts, £550 is the equity of our business, which isn't great. But again, we're looking long term, and we're looking to show that that equity is building year on year. So if you move on to year 2, we've got a little bit more cash. Like I said, we're doing those sales. So we've got cash in our hand, cash in the bank, and also customers owing us money. So that's basically cash in our hand. We're carrying over inventory. So we've got packaging that we haven't used that we can use again, and that all has a value. I've got my polytunnel again, and I also bought that irrigation equipment, so that has a value. But I've also got my credit card that's carrying on my bills, £700, and I've got my polytunnel loan. So it's all balancing each other out. But with the cash that I'm bringing in and the inventory and the tools that I have, the equity in the business is now just over £4,000. So from within 1 year, it doesn't sound like a lot, but you've built equity in your business of nearly £4,000, and that's showing to yourself and to an investor that your business is growing, which is really, really good. And then year 3, that carries on. So again, I've got more cash that I'm able to spend. I also, it depends on you, but I like to account for depreciation of an asset. And that gets complicated when you've got tractors and loans and everything else. So I've tried to keep it simple, but storm damage or sun damage or whatever, I've taken £500 off the value of that asset. But I also bought more irrigation equipment, more tools, so I have more fixed assets in my business. I've still got my credit card in my liabilities, and in year 3, which you'll see in my cash flow, I'm paying back my polytunnel loan. So I went to my broker or high street bank or whatever you want to go to, and I said, I've done my business plan, I've really thought it through. Unfortunately, I'm planning for my business to not really make much money in the first 2 years, but year 3, that's when I'll owe you the money. That's when I can pay the loan back. So I got a loan break for 2 years, and I'm paying back, £2,000 plus interest on that loan by year 3. So it's being really, again, open and honest. I've done my homework, and I can demonstrate to you that by year 3, I'll be, first of all, turning a profit, and second of all, have equity in my business and able to pay you back. How are we for time? Okay, I'll just run through these quickly. So this is an example of cash flow. So we've got for our projected financials, we've got our profit and loss statement, we've got our balance sheet, which we've just done, and then cash flow, which is, in my opinion, the most important, and definitely the most important for a lender, because it's going to show you forecasting the money coming in and out of the business and what that's going to do to your closing balance. So I've set it out like this. You can set it out however you want, but I'm doing it by calendar year. So I've got my months across the top. And then in the left-hand column, I've got my total income. And then I've also got my total outgoings or outflows. And this ideally should all line up with your profit and loss statement. So for example, I've predicted that in year 1, I'm going to make £4,000 worth of vegetable sales. And in my profit and loss, in the year 1 on the left-hand side there, you'll see vegetable sales, £4,000. So again, it's making sure that these all tie in together, and yeah, that it all makes sense to somebody that's reviewing this and reviewing your finances. I'm also including my loans and my kind of larger infrastructure payments. It's a bit confusing, and it depends on who you speak to, but in my experience, definitely in farming, any loans that you're taking to pay for large equipment or expensive infrastructure aren't typically included in your profit and losses, but they are included in your balance sheet. So your assets, you want to list that, and your cash flow, because you want to show the lender when the money is going to come in and when it's going out and how you're going to pay that back. But yeah, from what I've from my experience, the profit and loss, because it's a snapshot of a year, if you bought a £60,000 tractor that one year, that will completely skew your profit and loss, because we all know that you've taken finance for it, or you've taken a loan, or whatever that might be, or it might be a polytunnel or BCS or whatever it might be. If you say, I'm going to buy a BCS for £3,000 in my first year, it looks like you've made a catastrophic loss in your first year. But really, you most likely might have taken a loan for that, or you might be kind of, drip feeding, paying for it over multiple years. So it skews it if you only put it in one. But we do include it in our assets and our liabilities, and we do include it in the cash flow. So you'll see there, I've got my loan income coming in, and then it's very quickly going out when I'm kind of prepping my land and building my polytunnel. And you'll also see, so this is the start of my year one, my opening cash balance is £1,000. So that's what I've allowed, that I've been saving for, and I'm going to say, right, to start my business, I need £1,000. So that's my starting point. And it's also really important to highlight, I think I said it earlier, it's very common in all types of businesses, I think, but definitely in farming, for your forecasted or your actual income to go into the negative, especially early on. And that's just something that we, through this exercise, you can model that and see if you can chop and change when you're spending money to allow for when you've got income coming in, to kind of weigh that out. But it'll also tell you whether or not you need to take a credit card or an overdraft, or it helps you plan. But it's by no means a failure if that forecasted bank balance goes into a negative, especially in your first year or two. It's not an issue. And yeah, I wouldn't see it as I wouldn't skew my finances or lie to keep that positive. If I'm demonstrating to a lender, I think it's okay to say, I know that I'm going to have to use a credit card or an overdraft or whatever it might be for my first year or two. I think that's absolutely fine. So moving on to year two, I'm going to do these slides quickly, but again, you're going to get the slide pack, so you can have a look at these in more detail and check my maths. Go for it. We'll see. Just so if you've got a full year now of growing, be realistic, like I said, about forecasting the timings of that income. So we know in this market garden example, we've got the hungry gap, and you can't expect to be making thousands of pounds worth of sale when off of your small market garden in March. It's just not going to happen. So you need to be realistic about that. My opening cash balance for year two is the £700 that I ended my year one with. So I'm carrying that over. And then also I've noted that in my forecasted cash flow, I'm getting that negative balance at a similar time of year. So again, this just shows the seasonality of agriculture. Typically, especially market gardening, but most types, you've got that big upfront cost in spring or late winter when you're buying seeds and soil and whatever it might be, but then you don't see that money till late spring, summer. And again, that's fine. Don't be put off by that. It's just good to know. It helps you plan. And then moving on to year three, where things are starting to look good. So again, this is why we forecast for 3, 4, 5 years. I've carried that balance over from my closing balance from year two. And I'm now able to, by July of year three, I'm able to demonstrate to a lender or a partner or whoever that my business is, from now on, from July, unless I buy something, unless I invest in year four, my balance is going to be consistently positive. I'm always going to have money in my hand for, unexpected expenses or expansion or, whatever it might look like. Things are looking good from July onwards. And I'm also factoring in my loan payments. So like I said, in this example, I asked for a 2-year break because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to pay the loan back. I was upfront and honest. But by year three, like I said, the bank balance is looking good, and I factored in paying £2,000 of that loan back, and I'm still in the positive. So that's really, really good. Great to demonstrate to yourself that you realistically can take this loan, that this business can pay for itself and more. And also to demonstrate to a lender that, year 1 and 2 might look a bit dodgy, but by year 3, I'm a really good investment because I can pay that loan back. I feel like I really whipped through those slides, but I haven't got much time. So hopefully, if you've got any questions or if you want to go back and look at them, I've just got 2 more slides, I think. So we'll just whip through these. But like I said at the start, I think that everybody should be constantly reviewing their business plan. They can change mid-year fluctuations, as we've seen, with everything going on in the world. Prices can go up, prices can come down, and it's okay to amend your business plan so that it's more true to real life, and that will make it more accurate in the long run. I say to everybody, try and review them year on year. And yeah, like I said, look at what you actually earned or what your actual net profit was and see if it was worse, the same, better than what you forecasted. And ask yourself, why, if it's different. And you can also edit your business plan to model changes. So like I said, make a copy of your spreadsheet, and yeah, use it as a tool for you to plan the business and plan for years ahead. So kind of modeling situations like what would happen to my profit and losses if I increased my production. If I want to expand, can I afford to rent more land and when? Can I afford to take a salary or personal drawings from the business? That's a big one. Like I said, allowing yourself that target of, right, I'm going to work incredibly hard for the first 2 years, and I know by year 3 I can go down on my day job and I can pay myself from my business and things are going to be great. Can you afford to hire additional help? That's also a really big one. So when you're exhausted in year 1 and you don't see any light at the end of the tunnel, your business plan shows, like in my example, that your net profit is going up and up, and if you want to, by year 3 you could hire help. Could you be more profitable if you scale back on the land that you're renting but increase efficiencies? How would that look? Maybe your cost of sales would go up but your overheads would go down. And yeah, can you afford to take a loan for any equipment? Maybe you're broad forking a bed by hand and you would really like a compact tractor or something, whatever that might look like. Maybe you can say, well, actually by year 3 things look pretty good, so can I buy a BCS worth £3,000? What does that do to my net profit? Can I take a loan for it? Things like that. I think you should always be asking yourself questions of how, it organically happens anyway. Where's my business going? How is it going to what's it going to look like in the next few years? And then your business plan is the tool for forecasting that financially, at least. And then last one, I think, yes. So just some key take-home messages. I know that it's been a lot and I know that there's a lot of numbers. But again, I'll just say, be realistic and practical and think about what is achievable for you in the first 2, 3, 4 years. I love being a glass half full person, but I think in terms of business, it pays to be a slightly pessimistic or realistic and slightly pessimistic. Because if you set the bar low, you can only come up above it. If you can plan your finances for a rainy day and things go well, great. So yeah, key things to include, or all business plans should definitely have a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet, and cash flows for several years, ideally showing that upwards trajectory. They should definitely be reviewed and updated at least once a year. Ground truth everything, edit the prices if you're going to put your prices up or if your costs have increased, and edit it and make sure it's as accurate as it can be. It might take some time, but it's a worthwhile exercise, I think. And also just to remember, business plans aren't for new businesses. With some of the farmers I work with, we're planning for diversifications on the farm. They're looking to expand and seeing what, is that possible, what the finances might look like. And like I said previously, it can be used to model change. So make a copy, always make the copy so that you're not editing anything that's, vitally important. And yeah, just play with it and see where you can get to when you're chopping and changing the money you're putting in or the time you're putting in. And yeah, just use it as a tool, because I think it's for you more than it is for that landowner or that lender. And that's it. And 750, not bad.
Yeah,
But yeah,
wonderful.
hopefully that was useful in some way. If not, it was maybe like drinking from a fire hose, perhaps. But
Thank you so, so much, Vicky. That was honestly so informative. I can't believe how much you did manage to get in. So well done on that. But I'm going to keep you going and just try and do some quick fire questions because there's
do it.
at least four that I've seen in the chat.
Okay.
Um, so
I'll
bear
try.
with me. First one from Angus, is just about depreciation. How do you generally calculate depreciation? Is there a rule of thumb, or are you doing it based on your experience?
There isn't a rule of thumb, as far as I'm aware, and it will depend on what you're trying to allow for. Quite often, depreciation is important for you when you're thinking about the assets that are in your business. But most, like vitally, it comes in when you're using a lender to buy something. And normally, they will tell you what they expect it to depreciate, because they don't want you pulling numbers out of anywhere saying, like, oh, yeah, after a year, that'll still be worth 30 grand. They're going to say, no, we've done our market research, and as the lender, we think it's worth 25, and that's what they're willing to account for. Yeah, I can't really think of any. It's so case by case.
That's
But
great
again,
answer.
thinking a little bit pessimistic, if you account for depreciation and the equity in your business is still building, then that's great.
Okay. And one from Shivani. If the bank balance is going to be negative for multiple months in the first couple of years, does it affect your credit score?
That depends on how you're planning to deal with the negative. So my first go-to would be to try and model that change, and if you can, change when you're spending that money to fit when the income's coming in. But I know that that's not always possible, especially in farming. I would, if you're doing this exercise and if you're forecasting for a negative bank balance, I would be setting up a formal overdraft or getting a credit card to allow for that. I wouldn't be going into, my everyday bank and just letting it go into an overdraft, because that will affect your credit score, and there'll probably be fees attached to that. But if you're taking a credit card, or if you're dealing with a business bank who quite often, this is their bread and butter, they understand that businesses sometimes go into the negative, they will account for that and they'll allow you an overdraft if you're upfront and honest about the fact that your cash flow shows that you're going to go into the negative. But if I would definitely plan for it. If you don't plan for it and you just let your bank go into the negative, yes, that will affect your credit score.
That's a wonderful answer. Thank you. Angus asked another great question, which is about the pros and cons between being a sole trader or setting up a limited company. Are there any
Mm.
differences in tax, etc.? I know that this could be very long, so maybe just
Yeah,
brief if
again,
possible.
I always like to caveat when I'm in my wearing my professional hat. I'm not a tax specialist. There is a reason that most farm businesses, at least the ones that I work with, are either sole traders or partnerships. Typically, more likely partnerships. Sole traders and partnerships are when I might be telling you something you already know, but this is when the business, or whatever you're declaring, it includes your personal finances, and there can be tax benefits of that. So obviously, we get, I think it's 12 and a half tax-free allowance. So that can be, if you're not already using that in your personal income, that can be absorbed into the profit of your business as well. And if you're a limited company, the finances are completely disconnected from you and your personal finances, and you're like a director of that business. And that, again, can have tax implications. I don't know if I'm being completely honest, but I know that there must be a reason that most farm businesses are sole traders or partnerships. And my accountant told me and my partner to go into a partnership. So there's definitely tax benefits for farm businesses being a partnership, but I can't really tell you what they are. Sorry.
That's great to hear your experience, though. Thank you. We're doing really well. There's only one more question in the chat, so we might have time for another one, which is from Chrissy, and it was more of a personal question. Just wondered if you were happy to share a bit more about your business, your pig business, and if you potentially be prepared to share the name, because Chrissy would love to follow.
Our name is Petrichor Farm, Petrichor, and we're based in South Devon doing organic pigs. Been going for probably nearly 3 years now. And we are, yeah, just basically found a gap in the market. I don't know if many of you are familiar, but there's a big organic wholesaler down here called Riverford. And because of that, we're surrounded by rotational mixed organic farms that are constantly turning over their ground and more than likely have waste veg. So we thought that pigs would fit really well in that. Never done pigs before. I've worked on farms that have had pigs, so I've looked after them, but never done it in our own right. So that was a real learning curve. But yeah, it's going well. We're 2.5 years in, or whatever I said, making a profit, which is great. I'm following my business plan. We're expanding this year because we knew that we turned a profit and we can afford to buy more fencing and more troughs and more feed. So yeah, importance of the business plan. I do take my own advice, and yeah, I think it's really important.
Brill, that's amazing. Okay, and Angus has come in with another question. Thanks so much, Angus, for being so engaged. Any advice on market research? How to, as accurately as possible, estimate the amount of product that you'll sell to minimize losses from wasted product?
Mm. Yeah, so like I said, I would, before I've even started my numbers on my business plan or got pigs on the ground or crop seeds in the soil or whatever, that's the most important thing is that, like I said, the bank doesn't care how much you produce, it cares how much you sell. So advice for market research would be talk to people, go to events like Groundswell, engage with other local grow, not even local, national if you have to. There's loads of, my phone's pinging all the time because I'm on all these WhatsApp groups of people who are doing similar things. But I think that we're in a good space at the moment where like regen small scale farming is growing, and there will be a community out there for you to ask questions to, soundboard like how much you're charging for a kilo of herbs or whatever it might be. So just engage with the local community, research online. There's loads of things to do with baselining and loads of free courses that you can do depending on the business that you're trying to create. So I would forecast income that way, and I would find out from people who are doing it, how many carrots they're getting from a bed, and then I would go to people that I'm trying to sell to, whether that's online through a co-op, or through a wholesaler if that's your thing, local restaurants, local shops. Be really personable, tell them exactly what you're trying to do, tell them that you're passionate, explain your why, take them on the journey with you, as they say in all these marketing courses. And find out where are they currently buying their carrots, how much do they pay for a kilo, how much do they use in a week. Maybe I could start supplying you. I'm hoping to produce 5 kilos a week. Could you go down on your other supplier, and I could start supplying you. Another thing I would say about market research is don't overpromise. Again, be slightly pessimistic. There's nothing worse. I've done it personally, of promising a restaurant, in my example, something, and then not being able to deliver either on time or the right product, or and then you've lost that connection, you've lost that trust. So I would, yeah, be as personable as possible, be confident, and just go in and ask questions. The worst thing they can say is no, and then you're right off onto the next one. And try and line up people who are chomping at the bit for what you're growing, and then when you've got it, you're ready to go and you've got that money coming in.
Okay, that's wonderful advice. Thank you so much. I think that we have perfectly timed this.
Oh, look
So
at
thanks
that.
so much, Vicky. You've been absolutely incredible, and I'm sure that everyone on here is really, really grateful for your time. Honestly, just so informative, and I think the slide deck is going to be really great too. So I'm going to get that
Great.
out as quickly as I can to
Yeah,
people,
I'll send that over.
because I'm sure they're going to be full of ideas at the moment. Yeah, great. Thanks for coming through in the chat. And I know that lots of you are already doing wonderful things. So just urge you all to take on as much of this knowledge as possible. Speak to
Yeah,
us, the coordinators, if you want to sound check any ideas or talk any more. And thank you, Vicky.
no problem. And yeah,
No
like I said,
problem.
my email was there. I'm going to be at Groundswell 2 on the ADAS stand, so come speak to me. And yeah, if there's anything I can do to help, just let me know, or any questions that you've got.
Incredible. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording now.